Hello, so this is my revision video for topic 7 of Edexcel A-level history, civil rights in the USA, 1850 to 2009. And this is the second breadth topic, which covers the changing portrayal of civil rights issues in fiction and film, 1850 to 2009. So I've done a video on the approach to these breadth topics that I'll put in the description below, as well as my playlist for all my videos on civil rights in the USA, this paper. Okay, so I'm going to go through the specification, the timeline, the content breakdown, and then all the past questions, of which at the moment there's been 6. So I'll go through all of those. So onto the specification. So this is, the first point is about literature. And the thing with this topic is there's actually not a huge amount of content, really. So the novels are Uncle Tom's Cabin, Huckleberry Finn, Gone with the Wind, To Kill a Mockingbird, Beloved, and The Help. So that is 6. There's 6 novels there from across this period that you need to know about. Then the second point is about changing portrayals in film and television. It's also got paintings and photographs and lithographs from the 19th century as well. So if we include that, the paintings, photographs, and lithographs, then we've got Birth of a Nation, In the Heat of the Night, Roots, Mississippi Burning, Malcolm X, and The Wire. So there's kind of 7 things in the specification there that you could talk about. So there's kind of 6 novels and then 7 visual things, film, TV, and photographs. So there's not a huge amount really on the specification, and I think really I'll go through the content breakdown in a minute, but you've really got to think about this as turning points, change in continuity. You've got to think about this as kind of early, middle, and late, how things change over this big period, 159 years. So here's the timeline. I'm not gonna kind of talk through each of these. It's got the dates that things were released. You should know, so what, in terms of the detail, you should know kind of the context is really important, bringing in your own knowledge of the context of what was going on at the time. So if you're talking about, for example, if we just talk about Birth of a Nation in 1915, talking about the fact that that was during the period of the first Great Migration, and you could argue that that kind of reflects maybe white attitudes of fears of Black Americans in that period because of the migration that was happening. Similarly, Uncle Tom's Cabin, we're talking about this a period when slavery was happening, the abolition movement was growing. You know, knowing that and putting that into your essays is really important. Think about 1960, To Kill a Mockingbird. This is when the civil rights movement is you know, perhaps not its pinnacle quite yet, but it's very much underway. 1960 is the year of the sit-ins. We've had the Montgomery bus boycott. We've had the Brown decision. We've had Little Rock at that point. Similarly, In the Heat of the Night, 67. We've had the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. We've got the Black Panthers being established. Maybe more assertive Black American presence, you know, as reflected as In the Heat of the Night. So that kind of thing, you should really be able to bring in the kind of context, the historical context there. So in terms of the content breakdown, prepare for any turning point. Any of these things could be considered a turning point in terms of an essay. So I've just put maybe my top 4 things. So Uncle Tom's Cabin, Birth of a Nation, In the Heat of the Night, and Roots. But I think plan an essay on any of these things on the specification being potential turning points, then with kind of 3 others in an essay that you would use. But think about, what would you say is the most significant turning point in terms of the changing portrayal of civil rights issues? It could be negative. It could Birth of a Nation, a very, very racist, hostile film. It could be more of a positive, you know, if you think about Roots or In the Heat of the Night. It could be something just in terms of the impact. You know, if you think about Uncle Tom's Cabin, has a significant impact. So think about what you would consider the most significant turning point, but I would definitely prepare for any of these potentially being the one in the question. You could get a question on how the portrayal changes, portrayal of Black Americans, portrayal of civil rights issues, portrayal of race relations. So I've just put some ideas here. You could have a paragraph on kind of racist portrayals like Birth of a Nation or even Gone with the Wind. You could have you could have a paragraph on sympathetic but kind of paternalistic like Uncle Tom's Cabin or To Kill a Mockingbird. You could have a paragraph on maybe black agency, where it's much more about black Americans having their own agency, which maybe Beloved is the best example of that, or the Malcolm X film. You've also got the kind of white savior trope, which is common in some of these, The Help, To Kill a Mockingbird, those kind of things. I would always kind of plan this, as I said with my revision video for topic 6, think about early, middle, and late. And I've just put this in the kind of 50 years, so late 19th century I've actually put it up to 1960. I've put To Kill a Mockingbird in the middle period there, and then the last 50 years. So you can always break these essays down into early, middle, and late, and just saying how things are changing within these time periods. Yeah. Okay. Now on to the past questions. So, this from 2022. How accurate is it to say that the publication of To Kill a Mockingbird marked a key turning point in the portrayal of race relations in novels in the years 1850 to 2009? So it's really just asking about novels here. So To Kill a Mockingbird, obviously you start with that one, then you could talk about potentially Uncle Tom's Cabin, then Gone with the Wind, and then I've put Beloved there, so I've got the range from across the period, Beloved towards the end of the period. Obviously within those paragraphs you could potentially talk about other things. You could maybe mention The Help in that paragraph on Beloved and contrast that, or you could bring in maybe Huckleberry Finn in the paragraph on Uncle Tom's Cabin, so you're kind of covering more, but make sure you do bring in own knowledge to these paragraphs as well of the historical context, what was going on at the time. Question 2, 2021. How far do you agree the depiction of race in Huckleberry Finn was the key turning point in changing attitudes to race relations through portrayals in fiction and film? So it's fiction and film, this one. So I've said Huckleberry Finn, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Gone with the Wind. I've put Beloved there again, but you could say if you talk about fiction and film, you could maybe talk about In the Heat of the Night. You could maybe talk about Birth of a Nation. I haven't put that on there, but you could put that in there, fiction and film. So again, you could see this is a turning points question. Question 3 from 2020. Malcolm X was the most significant film in changing the perceptions of race among movie audiences, 1900 to 2009. How far do you agree? So you're starting with Malcolm X, then you could talk about Birth of a Nation, In the Heat of the Night, maybe Gone with the Wind. So yeah, they could be paragraphs you could talk about. Again, I think it's really important to talk about the historical context. It's talking about the extent to which these things changed perceptions of race among movie audiences. Okay, on to the final 3 questions. 2019, how accurate is it to say that the 1977 television miniseries Roots was a key turning point in the changing perceptions of black Americans in the year 1850 to 2009? So you can compare Roots to anything else. It could be novels, it could be films, it could be The Wire as the other TV series. So starting off with Roots, and I've just put Uncle Tom's Cabin, Birth of a Nation, To Kill a Mockingbird, but you could vary it, whatever you think. As I always say, this is not necessarily, I'm not saying these are kind of perfect answers. If you've got a better idea, that's great. Question 2 there from 2018. How far was the publication of To Kill a Mockingbird the key turning point in shaping white attitudes towards race relations? So what had the most impact in shaping white attitudes? To Kill a Mockingbird, it's a turning points question. Uncle Tom's Cabin, Birth of a Nation, Roots. I think that's pretty solid. To Kill a Mockingbird, Uncle Tom's Cabin definitely had an impact. Birth of a Nation definitely had an impact. And Roots definitely had an impact on changing white attitudes, shaping white attitudes. From 2017, how far did the repression of black Americans portrayed in photographs, films, and television produce changes in attitudes of white Americans towards race in the period 1850 to 2009? So that question doesn't have a specific focus. It doesn't have like a work that's going to be a turning point. So I would suggest with that one doing it early, middle, late, maybe 1850 to 1900, talk about that in one paragraph, then 1900 to 1950 or 1960 as your second paragraph, and then the later period as another paragraph. You could break down the repression Black Americans if you wanted to more kind of thematically, but I think early, middle, late is probably the most straightforward approach to that one, and talk about how things changed over time. So I hope that was useful in just breaking down this topic and going through the key points and the past questions. As ever, if you've got any questions or you want me to go into any more detail, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for listening.